He looked normal. Just a man with a suitcase, a smile, and a dream. But behind that smile was the biggest lie the banks had ever seen. He fooled the richest city in the Middle East, then crossed borders into Egypt, buying buildings, businesses, and even a media empire. But who was he, and how did no one stop him? This is not just a story about fraud. It's a story about belief, image, and the price of blind trust. Chapter 1. A Man from Nowhere. Have you ever met a man who says very little, but hides a dangerous secret? This is the story of such a man. He walked through the gates of Dubai with nothing but a passport, a smile, and a plan. He was short. He was quiet. He looked like any normal businessman, but his mind was sharp. His heart cold. His name? People say it was Ramesh, but nobody really knew. Ramesh didn't come from a rich family. He wasn't a prince. He didn't study at a top school. So how did he end up in a glass office, wearing a gold watch and shaking hands with millionaires? Let's go back to the beginning. Ramesh arrived in Dubai in the early 2000s. He lived in a small room. He sold cheap electronics. Sometimes he repaired old printers. Other times he sold used laptops to shopkeepers. He worked hard. He smiled a lot. And he listened, always listening. He learned how things moved in the city. He watched who had power. He studied the banks. He studied the rules. And then he began to build. First, he opened a small company. It was nothing special, just a name on paper. But he gave it a nice name, something that sounded strong, like Global Tech Holdings or Future Star Ventures. Then he opened another company, and another, and another. Each company had an office. Each office had documents. Each document had numbers, big numbers. But those numbers were lies. Still, the papers looked real, very real. Next, he went to the banks. He dressed well. He brought reports. He brought proof of success. He said, "Look, my company is growing. I need a loan to go bigger." And the banks? They smiled. They offered him money. Big money. Millions. Because they saw a man who looked clean. A man who spoke gently. A man who promised to pay back everything with interest. They didn't see what hid behind the smile. Soon, Ramesh had more money than he ever dreamed. He moved to a bigger office. He drove a luxury car. He hired people to speak for him. He shook hands with CEOs, ministers, even celebrities. But still, no one asked, where did this man come from? What did he really do before all this? They just said, look at him. He's smart. He's fast. He's rich. No one saw the danger. Not yet. Because in the shadows, Ramesh was hiding something. Something big. His companies were fake. His papers were fake. And the money? It was borrowed, again and again, from more and more banks. He was building an empire. but not on land or stone. He was building it on sand, on lies. And one day, the wind would blow. But not yet, for now, the man from nowhere was a king. Chapter 2. From small shop to golden office. Success can grow slowly or explode like fire. For Ramesh, it exploded, but behind the flames was something dangerous. It started with a little shop, just a few chairs, a cheap desk, an old computer. But Ramesh gave it a name that sounded powerful. He called it Infinity Investments. Nice, right? People walked by and thought, that sounds like a real company. They didn't know it was mostly empty. But the name, the look, the logo, it gave the feeling of success. That's what Ramesh was building. Not a real business, but the image of one. Soon, he opened another office. This one looked even better. There was glass, a receptionist, and fake awards on the wall. He hired actors to play clients. He paid them to walk in, shake hands, and say things like, "Thank you for the deal. Your company changed my life. We're proud to work with you." It was all for show. But it worked. Then came the websites. They looked professional, slick, international. There were pictures of meetings, charts, and foreign partners. All fake. But no one checked. Because people wanted to believe. In a city like Dubai, where success is fast and shiny, nobody wants to ask difficult questions. Ramesh understood this. He used it. And so, the banks started noticing. One bank offered him a starter loan, then another. He took the money, paid a little back, and asked for more. Each time he showed more success. Each time the banks gave him more. Soon, he was borrowing millions. But here's the twist. He didn't pay back the old loans. He used new loans to cover the old ones, again and again, like a tower of cards. One card holding up another until one falls. But for now, everything looked perfect. He bought luxury watches. He flew first class. He was invited to business events. He took photos with important people. And when people asked, "How did you become so successful?" he smiled and said, "Hard work." He gave interviews. He sponsored events. He even donated to charity. People started calling him the Indian business star, a role model, a self-made tycoon. But no one saw what was hiding behind the curtain. No one asked, "Where's the real business? Where are the real profits? Where are the real clients?" Because when a man wears a suit, drives a BMW, and speaks like a leader, people believe. One day, he stood at the top of a new building. He had just bought the whole floor. Marble floors, gold logos, private elevator. He looked out at the city and whispered, "They gave me everything, and they never even checked." But Ramesh forgot one thing. Lies grow fast. but they don't grow forever. Because somewhere, someone was watching, and soon, that someone would start asking questions. Chapter 3. The Perfect Lie. Sometimes, the most dangerous thing in business is trust. And the banks? They trusted Ramesh. He walked into the bank like a man with a dream. "I want to expand," he said. "My company is growing fast. I just need more capital." He showed them papers, reports, charts, fake profit numbers, all printed on clean white paper, with big logos and perfect grammar. Everything looked professional, too professional. The manager looked impressed. He asked a few questions. Ramesh answered calmly. He didn't stutter. He didn't blink. He was prepared. He said things like, "Our profits grew 200% this year. We have 5 new clients in Egypt and Saudi Arabia. We plan to open offices in Europe." None of it was true. But the words were sweet. The papers looked real. And his suit? Perfectly ironed. The bank approved the loan. Not just one loan. Many. They gave him millions. Because they saw growth. Because they saw confidence. Because they didn't see the lie. But wait, how did he fake the numbers? Easy. Ramesh had fake invoices, fake emails, fake bank statements. He created fake companies, then made them buy from each other. One company paid another. Then that one paid a third. It looked like real business, but it was all smoke. Smoke and mirrors. He even created fake phone numbers. So if someone called to check, they would hear a client say, "Yes, we work with Ramesh. He's excellent." But that voice? It was one of his employees, reading from a script, month after month. He took more money, used it to pay his staff, used it to pay the rent, used it to buy more fake success. And every time the banks asked, "How's the business?" he sent another glowing report. Charts going up, smiles and photos, new projects on the way. And the banks? They clapped. They called him a model client. They gave him better deals, lower interest, more freedom. He was in complete control. But the more lies he told, the more lies he had to protect. He built a wall around himself. A wall made of secrets. No one could get in. No one could see the truth. Except one person. A young bank analyst. Fresh out of university. Smart. Curious. Quiet. She noticed something strange. One of Ramesh's invoices had the same date and number as an invoice from another client. A copy. A mistake. She took a note. She didn't say anything yet, but the seed was planted, and seeds grow. Meanwhile, Ramesh kept rising. He bought a villa. He threw a party. He invited investors, bankers, media. Everyone smiled. Everyone clapped. Everyone believed. But behind the music, behind the food, behind the laughter, a silent clock had started ticking. Tick, tock, tick. Chapter 4, Money Rain. What happens when lies bring you everything you ever wanted? For Ramesh, it brought him the world, for a while. The money came fast. Bank after bank approved the loans. Each one wanted a piece of his success. They called him a visionary. They invited him to conferences. They gave him awards. And Ramesh? He smiled. He bowed. He played the role perfectly. First, he bought a luxury car. Black, shiny, brand new. Then he bought another one, and a third. One for business, one for weekends, one just to impress. People started noticing. "Who is this man?" they asked. "He must be doing something right." Next, he bought an office tower. Not just a floor, the whole building. He put his companies on every level. Receptionists, signs, busy phones ringing all day. From outside, it looked like a kingdom. Inside, mostly empty desks, people pretending to work. But no one cared because it looked real. Then came the shopping. He bought watches. Some cost more than a car. He bought clothes from Paris, shoes from Italy, a gold pen, just for signing fake contracts. He traveled first class. He stayed in presidential suites. He drank the best coffee, even though he preferred tea, because image was everything. But it wasn't just for him. He gave gifts, expensive ones, to bankers, to journalists, to politicians. He sponsored events, donated to schools, built a small hospital in a poor village. People said, "Look, a businessman who gives back." They didn't ask where the money came from. And the media, they loved him. They called him the Indian billionaire of Dubai, a self-made giant, a man with the Midas touch. He even bought a TV channel. Yes, his own media empire. Now he could control the story. Now he could shine his own light and hide the shadows. He started talking about expanding to Egypt, hotels, restaurants, even a movie studio. He met with government officials, smiled for photos, promised big investments, and they welcomed him, rolled out red carpets, offered land, deals, even citizenship. The money kept raining. But every storm starts with clouds, and one was forming. Remember the young bank analyst? She kept watching, kept digging, and one day she made a call to her manager, to the audit team. She said, "Something doesn't add up." They didn't believe her at first, but she had proof. And she wasn't the only one. In Egypt, a journalist started asking questions. Why were some hotels not open? Why were some companies just names on paper? He tried to visit one company. It was locked, lights off, no one inside. Something felt wrong. But Ramesh didn't notice. He was busy, flying between cities, smiling for cameras, living the dream, or maybe running from the truth. Chapter 5. Expansion into Egypt. When you build an empire of lies, the next country is just another stage. Ramesh had conquered Dubai. Now, he looked to Egypt. It started with a headline. Indian investor plans $500 million in Egypt. The news spread fast. TV channels repeated it. Newspapers printed his name in bold. Social media called him the hope of the Egyptian economy. Ramesh smiled. He arrived in Cairo like a king. Cars waited at the airport. A government official shook his hand. A red carpet was rolled out. He gave a short speech. I believe in the future of Egypt. I want to bring jobs, growth, opportunity. People clapped. The cameras flashed, but no one asked, where is this money coming from? Ramesh promised to build 5-star hotels. He said he would open tech companies. He even promised to support Egyptian movies. He showed blueprints. He showed 3D models. He showed more fake reports. Everyone believed him. Again. He bought old buildings in downtown Cairo, painted them, put his company signs on the walls. It looked like progress, but the doors stayed locked. The lights stayed off. Still, people believed. Because he had power. Because he had a story. Because people wanted to believe. Then he went to Alexandria. He stood by the sea and said, I will build a hotel right here. 300 rooms, 20 floors, luxury level. Journalists smiled. Businessmen clapped. And behind the scenes? He signed contracts. He opened bank accounts. He took more loans, from Egyptian banks this time. But something had changed. The journalist who visited his companies before? He wasn't done. He visited one of Ramesh's new hotels. There were no workers, no machines, only a sign that said, Coming soon. He asked around. One man said, They came 2 weeks ago, took photos, then left. Another said, It's just for show. The journalist wrote an article. Big promises, empty buildings. It was quiet at first. No one paid attention. But the young bank analyst in Dubai saw it. She sent it to her team. Now they were listening. They opened a file, started a full investigation, and quietly, without warning, they froze one of Ramesh's accounts. Back in Egypt, Ramesh didn't know. Not yet. He threw a party at the pyramids. Lights, music, guests. He gave another speech. This is only the beginning. He was still dancing, still smiling, still flying high. But something had cracked in the background. One Egyptian banker asked a simple question. Where is the real income? Another asked, Who are the clients? There were no clear answers, only fancy words. The questions were getting louder. And for the first time, Ramesh started to feel nervous. Chapter 6. The First Crack Lies can look strong until one tiny crack appears, and for Ramesh, that crack was finally here. It started with a phone call, a serious voice, a quiet tone. "Mr. Ramesh, we need to talk about your financial reports." He stayed calm. He smiled through the phone, but inside, something shifted. In Dubai, the young bank analyst had done her job. She found more fake documents, more strange payments, more red flags. The bank's audit team began their own review. They called it routine. But it was not routine. They looked at his companies, one by one. What they found was shocking. One company had no workers. Another had no tax records. A third used the same office as 10 other companies. It was all smoke. A house of mirrors. The tower Ramesh built started to shake. At the same time, in Egypt, the journalist's article finally went viral. People began to ask, is this man real? Where are his projects? Where is the money? TV stations asked him for interviews. He refused. He stayed quiet, too quiet, and that made things worse. One Egyptian banker froze his loan. Another canceled a deal. Suddenly, things weren't easy anymore. Suddenly, people were asking for real answers, and Ramesh didn't have them. In his office, he walked back and forth. He stared at the wall, the gold frame on his business award, the luxury clock ticking. Tick, tock, tick. He called a meeting with his team. "Fix this," he said. "Delete anything suspicious. Change the papers." But it was too late. The investigators already had copies. They were building a case. He tried to move money out of the country, to secret accounts, to different names. Some transfers worked. Some were blocked. The banks were watching now. Every step, every number, every move. Then came the worst news. One of his former employees, a man he fired without mercy, was now talking to the police. He gave them everything: documents, passwords, emails. The perfect storm had begun. Ramesh felt the walls close in. His eyes had dark circles. His phone never stopped ringing. Everyone wanted answers, but there were no answers, only lies and lies. Don't speak well under pressure. One morning, a loud knock came at his office door. He opened it. 2 men stood there. They weren't smiling. "Mr. Ramesh," one of them said, "we're here to ask you a few questions." Chapter 7. Panic in the Shadows. When a man builds a kingdom of lies, panic is the first enemy. And now, Ramesh was panicking. The questions were no longer polite. Where is the money? Who are your clients? Why are your documents different? The police were involved. Bank officials were nervous. Journalists were hunting for more. And Ramesh? He was trapped. He stopped going to public events. He canceled meetings. He changed his phone number. His team? Some stayed loyal. Others disappeared. One manager quit overnight. Another flew back to India without warning. The walls of silence were breaking. Inside his golden office, Ramesh worked day and night. He deleted files. He burned papers. He called his lawyers. "Tell them it's all a misunderstanding," he said. "Tell them the reports are just delayed." But no one believed that anymore. The media exploded. Headlines appeared every day. Business star under investigation. Fake companies? Fake success? Where is Ramesh's empire now? People began to turn against him. Some who praised him last month now said they always had doubts. Even the banks tried to protect themselves. They blamed each other. "No, we gave him money because Bank X trusted him." "No, Bank Y approved first." Everyone was looking for someone else to blame. In Egypt, projects were frozen. Hotels locked their doors. Construction sites stopped. Workers didn't get paid. Investors called for answers. And Ramesh? He stayed hidden. He moved from hotel to hotel. He wore sunglasses and hats. He used different names to book rooms. He was running, but not yet arrested. His lawyers sent letters. They said, "Ramesh is innocent." They said, "This is an attack on a successful man." But the documents told another story. So did the bank records. So did the angry voices of people who lost their money. Then, a video leaked. It showed Ramesh in a meeting, saying something dangerous. "Just make it look real. The banks don't check anyway." The video was short, but powerful. It went viral. Millions watched it. And now, even ordinary people were angry. The pressure grew. The police requested a full financial audit. Interpol was alerted. Travel bans were discussed. But Ramesh still had a plan. One last plan. He sent his assistant to collect some cash. He packed 2 bags. He bought a one-way ticket. To where? No one knows. But one thing was clear. He didn't plan to stay. That night, he looked at the city from his hotel window. The lights, the buildings, the dreams. He whispered to himself, "I had it all, and I played too far." Chapter 8. The Fall. When lies collapse, they don't fall slowly, they crash. And Ramesh's empire? It crashed hard. He tried to escape. Late at night, with 2 small bags. No goodbye. No press. No final speech. Just silence. And fear. But the police were already waiting. They didn't knock. They didn't ask. They arrested him at the airport. Passport in hand. Ticket in pocket. Eyes wide with shock. The man who fooled banks, investors, and entire cities now sat in a cold chair, in a small, gray room. The news broke fast. Ramesh arrested at Dubai airport. Police seized laptops, phones, and documents. The empire of lies falls apart. People were shocked. Some were angry. Some were embarrassed. Bankers who gave him loans now faced investigations. Government officials who took photos with him now denied ever knowing him. TV hosts who called him brilliant now called him dangerous. The fall was loud, public, and painful. The banks released reports. They said Ramesh owed millions, money gone, accounts empty, assets frozen. In Egypt, lawyers rushed to protect properties. Workers protested. Some hadn't been paid in months. One investor said, "He showed me everything. Offices, websites, reports. I believed it all. I gave him $200,000. Another said, "He ruined my life." Investigators found layers of fraud. Fake companies, fake employees, fake invoices, fake clients, dozens of shell companies. Some didn't even exist on paper, just names. He had created an entire world of illusion, a world that now lay in pieces. In court, Ramesh said little. Sometimes he looked tired. Other times he looked calm, as if he still believed he could escape. His lawyer argued he didn't steal. He just made bad business decisions. But the evidence said more. Too much more. One woman stood outside the courthouse with a sign, "Justice for the victims." Another man shouted, "We trusted him. We trusted a ghost." People were angry, and they had the right to be. Because Ramesh didn't just steal money. He stole trust. He stole hope. As the trial continued, more secrets came out. He had moved money to offshore accounts. He had used false names. He had planned to disappear long ago. It wasn't an accident. It was a plan, a perfect lie. Until it wasn't. Weeks later, the court gave its decision. Guilty. Fraud, forgery, financial deception. He was sentenced to prison. His empire was gone. All that remained were headlines and lessons. That night, from his small prison cell, Ramesh looked through the bars. No lights, no gold, no phones. Only silence. He whispered, "They believed in me because I looked like success." Chapter 9. Lessons from a Ghost. Ramesh is gone now. His name, no longer on buildings. His face, no longer in magazines. Only silence remains. But his story? It still speaks. People still ask, how did one man fool so many? Were the banks blind? Was the system too weak? The truth is, it wasn't just Ramesh who built the empire. Everyone helped. The banks wanted success. Fast, big, easy. They saw his smile. They saw his numbers. They didn't ask too many questions. Some didn't want to know the truth. Others were too lazy to check. Trust became a shortcut. And shortcuts can be dangerous. In Egypt, investors believed the dream. They saw gold. They saw TV cameras. They saw promises. And they forgot the rules. One businessman later said, "I never checked his documents. I just saw everyone else saying yes. So I said yes too." The media? They helped build the image. They wanted a success story. They wanted a hero. So they made one. Even when the signs were clear. Even when the truth was close. They didn't ask the hard questions until it was too late. But maybe the biggest lesson is not about banks or business or media. It's about people, how we judge, how we trust, how we believe. We trust suits, big words, luxury. We trust the surface and forget to look deeper. In school, we learn about math, history, science. But we don't always learn about scams, about critical thinking, about asking, is this real? What's missing? Why does it feel too perfect? Ramesh may have gone to prison, but he left behind a lesson. If something grows too fast, ask why. If someone offers everything, look closer. If the story is too good, check the facts. Because trust is precious. And once it's broken, it's hard to fix. Years later, a student reads the story. He says, "How could anyone believe that?" But maybe, one day, he'll meet a man with a big smile, a big company, and big promises. And then he'll remember. As for Ramesh, some say he changed in prison. Others say he's planning again. Waiting. Watching. Silent. Like a ghost in the system.